This is the most ingenious, practically productive model of knowledge translation I've ever been involved in. It's been one of the highlights of my career to have been able to organize and participate in Project ECHO Epilepsy across the lifespan. It's brought all of the Ontario Epilepsy Network together because all the hubs participate. And so we all know each other better, we all are on the same page in what the goals are. And I think an example of that, of its power, is the way it's extended now. So we have the genetics echo, and we have the the echo for residents and trainees that Dr. Donner's put together. I mean, the sky's the limit in what you can do with echo. Well, first of all, I stand in awe of my colleagues in ECHO. You know, I think one of the things that Sanjeev Arora, the founder of ECHO, has said, which is a mantra for me, is all teach, all learn, which means I teach them and they teach me. So what they've taught me is primary care. I'm a pediatric neurologist and pediatric epileptologist, so I participate in the pediatric echo. So my perspective is from a pediatric epilepsy point of view, because those are the echoes I participated in. And they have taught me general pediatric care as it relates to neurology and epilepsy in the community. Because my practice here is, I see, if you have a child with epilepsy, you do not want to see me, because if you see me, by definition, your child is way out of control, seizing night and day on multiple drugs, and may be a candidate for epilepsy surgery or some other out-of-the-box therapeutic regimen we try and cook up to stop the seizures. So all of my kids have really bad epilepsy. Many of them are disabled in all sorts of ways. And that's the perspective I come from, a really complex quaternary tertiary care center. And these people that I have learned to know and respect over the last 3 or 4 years have a completely different experience, a completely different perspective, but it's equally, if not more valuable than mine, because they see and interact with kids in the trenches on an everyday, practical, real-life level. You know, we talk all the time about quality of life, and we do strive to improve the quality of life of our kids, which is so important and so difficult for many of their parents, who are about the most courageous bunch I've ever seen, actually, parents of my patients. But these community practitioners have this unbelievable wealth of knowledge and understanding about what their patients need. They have an amazing grasp and access to the wide range of resources, particularly school resources and social resources that they can just rattle off the top of their head that their kids normally they get for their patients. And clearly they care about their patients. I mean, all of us are passionate about taking care of our patients. So it's been a completely different perspective from my experience to participate with them, and I've learned so much from them in that regard. So actually this was a combined echo session. It was a combined epilepsy across the lifespan with a pediatric complex care echo session. And Dr. A.L. Cohen facilitated the session, and I was the neurologist. And the session was about the use of CBD in epilepsy, because CBD is now a generally accepted 3rd or 4th line medication for patients with epilepsy that don't respond to traditional medications. The evidence is very good that it works. But the patient presentation was of a little girl or boy, I can't remember, in northern Ontario somewhere. And this child had terrible epilepsy, had a very malformed brain, and had a family that was quite distrustful of any medication, because like many parents of children with epilepsy who have significant developmental disability, including intellectual disability, they are justifiably frightened of medication altering their child's development or altering their child's interaction with them. So things that we take for granted with a child, like the ability to smile and laugh and recognize you, is really a big deal for them. So it's a really big deal if their child smiles at them or recognizes them. And a lot of the drugs that we use to control seizures interfere with that. And so they were, this family wasn't too interested in medication. So they presented this child to me, and I showed everyone at the meeting the images of this child's brain, which just to explain how malformed the brain was and how disabled this child was and how bad the seizures were. And in the end, we arrived at a strategy as a group, because that's one thing, great things about ECHO is that we kind of arrive at a group strategy if it's facilitated correctly. We arrived at a group strategy that perhaps we could use a device called a vagal nerve stimulator in this child rather than medication. Now, a vagal nerve stimulator is a device that stimulates the brain through the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve runs from the brain down through the neck and to the heart and the lungs and the gut. And normally it subserves really vegetative functions, like heart rate, respirations, peristalsis of the gut, and GI motility. But it was discovered back in the 80s that if the electrical impulses normally flow from the brain down the vagus nerve, but if you stimulate the vagus nerve and orthodromically, that is, you deliver electrical discharges up through the vagus nerve to the brain, you can make seizures better. And that's a fairly standard treatment now for children who fail medication or who fail surgery or who are not candidates for surgery. And so that's what I proposed for this child. And the parents ultimately came to see me out of this visit. The referral was made by the doctor who made the presentation at the ECHO. We evaluated the child for VNS, which is vagal nerve stimulator. She got it, and she's way better now. And that all happened from an ECHO session. So one of the big issues with ECHO is making our presence known amongst the practitioners in Ontario who treat patients with epilepsy, and that's virtually everybody, because patients with epilepsy are ubiquitous and they're cared for by virtually every healthcare provider, including nurse practitioners. I think there are places in Ontario, I know there are places in Ontario where nurse practitioners are the primary caregivers for a lot of kids and adults, and we're just not reaching them, and I don't know how to reach them. But I think that should be one of the emphasis in terms of strategies going forward. So those are the major gaps. I think we've done pretty good with pediatricians. We've done well in Southern Ontario. My big hope for the future is that we could somehow develop strategies to reach the northern part of the province, in particular First Nations. I think that I really would like to see that happen. I came here from the States about 26 years ago, where everything's money, 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 right? And since 2013, I've been so impressed with the Ministry of Health in terms of their partnership. They were the ones that approached me to try and develop an ecosystem because they saw that we were struggling to develop a knowledge translation piece. And they've been with us every step of the way. None of this would happen without them.